Hello there and welcome to what is maybe the first and last thing. I'm just bored doing work and I wanted to do something else for a change, something for myself. So today, just in time for the spooky season, we will be talking about the classic, the one and only 1978 horror film Halloween. Yes, I'm from Jersey and I don't know how to pronounce certain things like horror, orange, things like that. My O's are a little terrible. So bear with me and let's talk about John Carpenter's Halloween. Halloween was released in 1978. It is a quintessential slasher film directed by John Carpenter. The movie, which follows the story of Michael Myers, an escaped mental patient who returns to his hometown of Haddonfield to terrorize babysitters. This movie became a landmark in the horror genre. With a modest budget of only $300,000, it grossed over $70 million worldwide. Now that being said, $300,000 is very low to make a film. However, in 1977, that's close to like $1.5 million. So was it really a low budget feature film? Independent film, yes, this movie was an independent film. And then it did its thing. However, this movie cemented its place as one of the most profitable independent films of all time. Halloween became the template for the slasher genre that would dominate the 1980s, influencing films like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. There's so much information out about this film, and since this is just like a test run of doing these type of videos and stuff like that, I'm going to just talk about pretty much like interesting facts that are well known to this movie. Everything is really out online about the making of this movie, so nothing really new has reached the surface. So let's talk about some facts that you probably already know. The iconic mask worn by Michael Myers was actually a modified Star Trek mask of Captain Kirk. The filmmakers purchased it for $1.98 at a costume shop, painted it white, widened the eye holes, and teased the hair. The result was the eerie, expressionless face that became synonymous with terror. Carpenter later said the blank mask symbolized the soullessness of Michael Myers. John Carpenter has made so many amazing movie scores. I own way too many of them on vinyl down there. I would put John Carpenter's music probably as well known as like John Williams scores, Bernard Herrmann scores. The list can go on, but it's a very, very, very small list. John Carpenter himself composed the haunting minimalist score that is now one of the most recognizable in film history. The famous Halloween theme was written in 5/4 timing signature, a rather unusual rhythm for film music. Carpenter learned this time signature from his father, a music teacher, and it became an integral part of building the film's unsettling atmosphere. Carpenter claims that when he first screened the film without the music, nobody found it scary. But after adding his score, the mood changed completely. Jamie Lee Curtis starred in this movie, and if you don't know and have been living under a rock, Jamie Lee Curtis is the daughter of Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh. Janet Leigh, most famously known for her role in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, and Tony Curtis is in a ton of movies, but he's in one of my favorite, Some Like It Hot. This was Jamie Lee Curtis's first feature film role, portraying Laurie Strode, and it launched her career as a scream queen. John Carpenter thought casting Jamie Lee Curtis was a fun nod to horror film history. The famous opening sequence with young Michael Myers creeping into the house, around the house, and murdering his sister. That was all done in one continuous take. I'm going to do air quotes here because as an editor, we all know where those cuts are. At least I do, because I do a lot of those whip pans and stuff and add the cut and hide the cuts and to make it all feel like one continuous take. I'll show it right exactly here. So you see going frame by frame, you can see that little shift go on. I'm ruining movie magic, but yeah, it is what it is. Since the movie was shot on small budget, many corners had to be cut. For example, the crew used leaves painted to look like autumn foliage. As the movie was shot in Southern California in spring, far from the Midwestern fall vibe it aimed to portray, after each scene, the leaves were collected and reused to save money. Carpenter's then girlfriend, producer Deborah Hill, also pitched in. Now let's talk about Deborah Hill just a little bit. One of the most interesting producers out there. She went on to go produce The Adventures in Babysitting. She even went on to produce Nicolas Cage's World Trade Center. And Deborah Hill co-wrote and produced Halloween. While Carpenter wrote the chilling aspects of the story, Hill crafted much of the dialogue for the female characters. She had worked as a babysitter herself, giving her the perfect insight into the teenage banter and experiences that made Laurie and her friends feel so authentic. Now, a fun, interesting fact that I just personally love. Deborah Hill grew grew up in a small town called Haddonfield, New Jersey, which is about like a 10-minute drive from where I even grew up. So I always found that super interesting. And when you watch the movie Halloween, I can always like see it's like, oh wow, that actually looks like Haddonfield, New Jersey. But it takes place in fictional Haddonfield, Illinois. Another fun thing too is that a young Steven Spielberg once lived in Haddonfield, New Jersey. That's always fun to know. I love that type of shit. Deborah Hill found success with John Carpenter's other movies like The Fog and Escape from New York. However, she did pass away in 2005. On set, the masked killer Michael Myers was often referred to as The Shape. This came from the script's description of the character when he is masked, emphasizing his inhuman qualities. The term The Shape later became a way to describe Myers in horror lore, enhancing his status as an unstoppable force rather than a human character. Now, while Halloween wasn't the first slasher film, films like Psycho and Black Christmas came well before, it solidified the formula. The unstoppable killer, the final girl, the use of POV shots, and the idea of punishment for premarital. Carpenter has said that while people often interpreted these themes as a moral stance, they were more incidental. He was focused on building tension and suspense rather than making social commentary. Yeah, I'd like to go off and say that in 1974, Black Christmas came out, and it's just one of my favorite movies in general. Writer-director Bob Clark, who after making that movie, he also found success with making one of the first like high school raunchy comedies, Porky's. He also went on to make one of the most well-known family Christmas movies, A Christmas Story. He even did a Baby Genius. Not his best work, but anyway, still fun nonetheless. But there is an interview that Bob Clark did where apparently John Carpenter asked about if Bob Clark were to make a sequel to Black Christmas, what would it be? And Bob Clark was like,
it'll be he was captured. After all, he was put in an institution, and the movie will begin the night he escapes back in town, and they don't know it yet, and I'm gonna call it Halloween.
John Carpenter took that and ran with it, and of course Bob Clark was happy to let him go ahead and do his thing, so he added his own kind of spin to it.
He deserves the full expansive credit he's gotten for doing that movie. I mean, like I say, a few words about an idea are hardly a screenplay in a finished movie.
And when I went and saw the requel, that word, the requel of Halloween, David Gordon Green's Halloween, it was a triple bill. It opened up with Black Christmas, 1974's Black Christmas, and then they played the original Halloween, and then it went into David Gordon Green's Halloween. That was one of the best triple features I've ever seen in my life, because it's just like, I mean, the first two obviously are just classics, and then I actually really enjoyed the remake, the requel, whatever, the sequel, however you want to call it, of Halloween. Didn't really care for Halloween Kills, but I actually did like Halloween Ends the most, probably out of that trilogy. Yeah, maybe the one, maybe 0.1% people that think that. Veteran actor Donald Pleasance played Dr. Sam Loomis, the psychiatrist obsessed with stopping Michael Myers. Interestingly, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing both turned down the role, with Lee later admitting it was a mistake. Pleasance reportedly took the part because his daughter was a fan of Carpenter's previous film, Assault on Precinct 13. Halloween was revolutionary in how it used atmosphere, suspense, and music to build tension. With very little blood or graphic violence, the film instead relied on the audience's imagination and fear of the unknown. The success of Halloween sparked a franchise, spawning numerous sequels, reboots, and reimaginings over the decades. Michael Myers, with his slow, methodical movements and signature mask, remains a staple of horror iconography to this day. Whether it's the clever use of a low budget, the unforgettable music, or the unexpected talent of young Jamie Lee Curtis, Halloween remains a touchstone in horror movie history, a film that showed how terror could be achieved with minimum resources but maximum imagination. There's actually a lot of the Halloween movies I do like. However, in my opinion, I think it's one of my least favorite horror franchise. Come at me. That being, I believe that I would rather watch a Nightmare on Elm Street series and Friday the 13th series over any of the other Halloween movies. However, I do really enjoy Halloween H2O. That's one. And shamefully, the first movie I was allowed to go on my own and actually get inside to the theater was Halloween Resurrection. That's definitely not the best of the franchise. However, it was a lot of fun to just go see it 8 times because, yeah, it was like 13 years old and I was allowed to just go see this horror movie. But overall, it's a fun franchise. If you haven't dived into the Halloween franchise, there's so many to go off on. I even enjoyed Rob Zombie's Halloween and actually his Halloween 2, preferably the theatrical cuts. I didn't really care for the unrated versions, and if you've seen those versions, you'll probably understand why. I'm not even going to mention it here. But anywho, so that's the first and maybe the last of these things. Who knows? Maybe I'll do another one on Black Rose. I'll just do it for holiday movies. That's it. Who knows? We'll see. This was just a quick ramble about John Carpenter's 1978 Halloween. Thanks for checking this video out, and maybe we'll do it again sometime soon.